Welcome to the I Made a podcast where we hear from podcasters about the wisdom that they learned since starting their own podcast so you can do the same. And now here's your host, Chris Curry.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of I Made a Podcast. Solo episode today, but it's filled with a lot of great podcasting goodness. If you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Curry, and I'm glad that you're here today. Now, today I'm going to share some advice for new podcasters. So if you know any podcasters who are new and they need some advice to get into the game or to get a little better, share this episode with them so that they can listen. I have a lot of great insights that I gathered that I'm going to share in today's episode. But before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know about my podcasting cheat sheet. It's a downloadable document with a list of resources that you can have and you can use them to get an excellent sounding podcast. And I call it a cheat sheet because some of these resources that I mentioned on this resource list are free. Yes, free. That means you can start to use them, see the benefits of having these resources on your podcast without having to spend a dime. So to get access to this list, there's a link in the description. You can go and check the list and save the link as one of your favorites on your browser so you can go back to it often. Because when I find out new tools and new resources as a podcaster that I can use for my podcast, I put it up there on that cheat sheet so you can use it as well. Now, at the time that I'm releasing this episode, it's the beginning of June, and in the past month, I've shared some great episodes of the podcast. Last week, I spoke to Destiny Mackey, who is a boundary coach, and she has a podcast called Boldly You, and this was a very insightful conversation that I had with her, and I would encourage you to check it out. And I also recently spoke to Jim Savucci, who has two podcasts. One of them is called The Dilettantes, and the other is called On Leading with Greatness. And what's most interesting about his podcast is how he creates his content for his podcast On Leading with Greatness. Basically, his content comes from his essays. So any writers out there or journalists, if you do a lot of writing, you potentially have a podcast episode. So if you're thinking about having a podcast, you should go listen to the episode that I did with Jim. You can stir up some ideas of how you can start a podcast if you enjoy writing. Now, earlier in May, I spoke with Amy Flanagan, who is a communications specialist, and her podcast was called The Savvy Communicator. And this would be a great podcast to listen to so that you could learn how to speak when you're not sure what to say. And at the beginning of the month, I spoke to Danny Marie, and she is a podcast planning strategist. So she actually has multiple podcasts, and she works with podcasters to help them get their message out there and help to make impact with the message that they are doing with their podcast. So my conversation with her was very insightful, full with lots of takeaways and practical things that we can all learn from as podcasters. Now, I mentioned all of this so that you can go back and listen to those episodes from the beginning of the month of May. They were really powerful, and I encourage you to go and listen to them. They were great. I learned a lot, and I know that you will learn a lot as well from listening to those episodes. Now, my final announcement, just before we get into this topic for today, is I want to let you know that the podcast is now on YouTube, which is why everything is on video. I'm recording this right now. So along with the audio version of this podcast, you can get on all of the podcasts and apps out there, I'm also recording and releasing the video of this podcast, every interview and every episode that I do, so that you can actually see the guests that I'm speaking to and be engaged with that content that I release on YouTube every Wednesday. And I'm also publishing shorts to YouTube as well, so you can go and get the little clips with powerful insights from whoever I'm speaking to that week. So subscribe to the channel on YouTube. I put links in the description of this episode so that you can go and check out and follow I Made a Podcast on YouTube. And now for our main event, advice for new podcasters. So I got the content for this episode from a Facebook group that I'm a part of. I noticed that there are a lot of podcasters out there looking for insight that can help them overcome the hurdles as they are just starting out in their podcast. So I decided to consolidate all of those responses from this Facebook post and put them together on this episode. Now, there are a lot of good advice that I'm going to share in this episode and a lot of actionable steps for podcasters, both if you just got into podcasting or if you're about to start. So a lot of actionable steps that you can take from this episode, from the things that I learned from this one Facebook post. So let's get into this episode today. It's advice for new podcasters. So the first advice that I have for new podcasters is know your purpose. Understand why you are podcasting and keep your why clear. Now, this is extremely important for new podcasters because you need to understand your why or the general theme of your podcast because it gives the listeners focus. They know what to expect when they go and see a new episode of your podcast. They know the theme of your podcast or the direction that you are taking with your podcast. And by doing that, it helps you also in marketing your podcast. Because if you find a group of people that are related to a specific theme or topic that is related to your podcast, you can continue to market or share your podcast episodes in that place. So knowing your why for your podcast, why you are podcasting and your theme and your purpose, that is extremely important if you are just starting out. My advice to you would be to write it down and make it plain so that you can keep focused on it as you are preparing new episodes and interviewing guests and finding people to have on your podcast. Make sure that you know your why. Now, the next advice that I want to share that I got from this Facebook group is have a great cover art that reflects your podcast title, your tagline, which is clear and to the point and in less than 10 words. Now, this is extremely important because in the clouded world of podcasting, your artwork has to stand out. People need to be able to see your podcast artwork and be attracted to what they see. So having good cover artwork that stands out among the crowd is extremely important if you want to try to find new listeners for your podcast. So I would even encourage you to pay a professional to design and create your podcast artwork so that they can create something that pops and stands out from the rest of stuff out there, because there are a lot of podcasts out there. And if anyone goes to search for a podcast, what they will see first is that podcast artwork. So make sure that your artwork pops out from the rest of them and is something that catches the eyes when people look at it. Now, the next advice that I got from this Facebook group on advice for new podcasters is for you to be yourself. Don't focus too much on your mistakes. You get better every day. Don't listen to negativity. Keep going. Be unstoppable. Be encouraging and never give up. And most importantly, let God run your show. Now, this comment, I love it because I'm a Christian, but this comment was written by another Christian, encouraging another Christian podcaster. That's why they said, let God run your show. Don't focus on trying to be someone else. You have unique giftings and abilities, and through your own uniqueness, you will stand out from the rest. And everybody will make mistakes from time to time. So don't worry about the mistakes. You will learn and you'll get better as you continue to podcast. So don't let the mistakes cause you to quit. Don't listen to negativity also, because if everyone listened to the negativity out there, eventually they would give up and quit. So be unstoppable if you believe that you are called to be a podcaster, to share your message, to encourage others, to help teach people, to help lift someone up through your experiences or through the insight that you have. Continue to do it. Continue to put in the work. And again, most importantly, be yourself. Now, some more advice for new podcasters that I got from this Facebook group is don't focus on the numbers. If you connect with an audience, numbers will come. Encourage yourself daily. Launching a podcast is hard. Building it is even harder. Keep yourself encouraged. Now, this comment was so on point, and I've mentioned this before in a previous episode when I spoke about my podcasting journey. Don't focus on the numbers right away. Actually, I would encourage you not to even focus on them at all, but focus on putting forth quality content, excellent content, making sure your audio is good, and you will see that the numbers will follow. If you worry about doing your best with regards to your podcast, people will recognize it and people will follow, and the numbers, the downloads will follow. So don't worry about the downloads, the numbers, especially if you're just starting out, because it will be a small number of downloads in the beginning. But eventually, as you continue to put in the work and get better, you will see that you will get more downloads and your audience will increase, your subscribers will increase, and your engagement in every single episode and every single post will increase as well. And your message will be heard by many people as you continue to get better and grow in this area of podcasting. So don't stop. Don't focus on the numbers and allow that to cause you to quit. So the next comment that I want to share from this episode is to make sure that the sound quality is good. So make sure you have a quality microphone, quality headphones, and learn how to edit. Now, This is near and dear to my heart because when I hear audio quality that is not good, I can't even listen to it. Even if it's a topic that I want to listen to, if it's not good quality audio, I can't listen to it. So please make sure that you have a quality microphone. It doesn't have to be expensive, but you do need to be practicing good microphone technique and placement. Make sure that you have good headphones so that you can hear what's going on and you can learn how to edit properly. Now, one of the things that I do, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is I have a cheat sheet of all of these resources, software and hardware that you can get that I know have good quality and will help you to get good audio. So I would encourage you at this point to go and download my cheat sheet so you can see some of those resources out there. Because even if you record something and you realize that there was some buzzing or some background noises or some echoes in the room, there's a lot of software out there that you can use to clean up that audio so that it can be almost studio sounding quality. So you can download that and use some of those tools, even some of them for free, so that you can get the best sounding quality audio when you are doing your podcasts. Now, there's only a couple more things left for this episode of advice that I'm going to give for new podcasters. The next point that I want to share from this Facebook post is things that you should do or make sure that you have in place before you launch. Number one is to have at least 10 episodes ready before you launch. Now, this is important because you don't want to fall behind in your podcast release schedule. So have at least 10 episodes prepared, either have a script or an outline for those episodes already done so that you can easily record those episodes when the time comes and then publish it and release it. Because the worst thing to happen is you release your episodes on a weekly basis and you realize that you have a brain cramp and you can't think of a new topic or something to talk about for that episode. So have at least 10 episodes ready and good to go so that when you do need to record, you just need to open up your script or your outline and start to record your episode. You don't have to think too much about it. You already have everything ready and prepared and you can just go. The other thing that I want to share at this point, and I tell this to all my clients that I coach when they are starting out their podcast, is make sure that you have a script or an outline that you can follow. And this is important, even if it's just bullet points, because it helps you stay focused when you are doing your recording. It reduces the number of mistakes, the odds, the ums, and the likes and whatnots, and all the filler words that might get into your audio when you have a script, an outline, or at least bullet points. It keeps your mind focused. And what this does is it makes the editing process a lot easier and faster. The hardest part through all the podcasters that I've spoken to, the hardest part for them that I have gotten from them was that the editing takes so long and it's such a tedious process. But if you have good sounding audio when you are recording, and if you can reduce the number of mistakes by reading off of a script or using bullet points or an outline, then you won't need to edit the audio that much afterwards. So have a script, an outline, or bullet points. It will keep you on track and help reduce the amount of editing that you have to do after the fact. And the last advice that I want to share for all the podcasters out there who have just started, or if you're about to start, is have a set time to record. Lock it down on your calendar and record it. Take a short break after you finish recording and then get back to it right away and start editing and get it out of the way and get it done and publish it or schedule it to be published when the time is ready to go. Now, this is important as well because I'm sure that you guys know what Murphy's Law is. What can go wrong will go wrong. So if you wait to the last minute to record your podcast when your episode needs to be released tomorrow, but if you wait till today to record your episode and then something comes up, an emergency happens and you don't actually get to do that, then you're going to be stressed. Your people who subscribe to your podcast will be expecting an episode, but they won't see it because you didn't get a chance to record it. But if you make a set time in your calendar to record your podcast, then you don't need to worry about that. You can set up a 30-minute window or an hour window for you to record your podcast or to meet with guests. Record during that time, and as soon as you finish, you have that motivation and that excitement after you recorded that episode. Do the editing right there and then move straight into scheduling that podcast to be released. And the last thing that I want to say for all new podcasters out there is be consistent, be yourself, be different, be helpful, and make sure that you have fun, because I enjoy podcasting and I hope that it shows that I have fun while I'm doing this, because I'm really enjoying myself talking to new podcasters about podcasting and I love helping other people out there with the knowledge that I've gained through podcasting. So that's all I wanted to share. This is some advice for new podcasters. Remember to subscribe to this podcast. I release episodes every single Wednesday morning, so you can subscribe and expect a new episode from me every Wednesday morning, and you can listen to it. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, or you can use one of the podcasting apps and subscribe, and you can follow along as I continue to learn and grow and get more knowledge about podcasting. So the best time to start a podcast was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. So go ahead and make it happen. And you'll hear from me next week on I Made a Podcast. Peace.